for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. We're back in business. It's Monday. We've got a lot to get to. But before we do, we have to wait for the stream to be working. Hello. But it looks like we're alive and well, so let's get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. Throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today. We're going to get right into it. We've got a lot to get to. We're going to start off by talking about, of course, the COVID coronavirus investigation. Spent a lot of time last week sort of dissecting some of Dr. Anthony Fauci's emails. Got some interesting little tidbits from those documents. And today there's a new story rummaging around on Capitol Hill that apparently there was an old report that was available sometime in May 2020. So about a year ago today, there was a very detailed report that came out of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory out of California that had something to do with the lab escape theory. The idea that the coronavirus emerged from a lab in Wuhan, the Wuhan Lab of Virology, in fact, not out of a bat, out of a cave somewhere deep in South China like they have been telling us. So this report's been around for some time, and apparently our government never really looked at it. A handful of people looked at it, but our congresspeople, the people, who set the policy that we're all supposed to follow, apparently they didn't get much information about what was going on. So we're going to go through that story. Then we're going to talk about some funding issues. Apparently the NIAID, the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, something that Dr. Fauci ran. Remember, he said in front of Congress that, oh, no, we don't know anything about any gain of function research that's happening out of Wuhan. Well, it turns out that may not be the case because there are some emails that show that there were some pretty serious monetary payments made from the U.S. government over to Wuhan. So we're going to look at that. And then, we talked about this doctor last week, Dr. Christian Anderson. Talked about him quite a bit, actually. And on my second channel, Robert Gruler ESQ, not live, all of the recorded stuff on that channel, I did a deep dive on the Nicholas Wade article that spends some time talking about this doctor, Dr. Christian Anderson. Well, we talked about him last week as well, and he just deleted his entire Twitter account. Can you believe that? This person was somebody who wrote a letter at the early onset of coronavirus saying that the lab escape theory was totally bonkers. He's sort of getting called out about that now, and he just calls it, I'm done, deletes the Twitter account. So we're going to show you what's going on with that. Now, the Supreme Court, in our second segment, we're going to talk about the SCOTUS. The Supreme Court of the United States came out with a new list of orders. They are rejecting some cases, and they've given us some rulings on some other cases. So we're going to give you an update, go through some of what's going on there. The National Coalition for Men, they filed a lawsuit against the National Selective Service System over the draft, saying, hey, if you're just mandating that men come and serve in our armed services and serve the country in foreign wars, that's kind of discriminatory. The year is 2021. We got like 75 genders now. So maybe this is time to revisit this, and maybe we can make it a little bit more inclusive and more diverse. Don't we want that in this country? Supreme Court said, we don't want to hear the case. Get out of here. So we're not going to spend much time on that other than showing you that it was rejected. Then we're going to take a look at a case that the Supreme Court did accept in the case of FBI versus Fazaga. This is a case dealing with state secrets and whether or not the government can withhold evidence from a criminal defendant, somebody who's been charged with a crime, if it is a state secret. Very interesting case, so that'll be fun to go through. And then, of course, over the weekend, last week, a leftover, we have a judge. Judge Benitez out of California, federal district court, came out and said that the local state ban on AR-15s out of the state of California, not constitutional anymore. So throws that right out. The assault weapons ban out of California, I think it's been around for like 32 years. Not anymore. This judge came out and said that the constitutional provision, the right to have and keep and bear arms and to protect yourself, and some of the underlying principles that are based out of the immutable principles of self-defense, he says, those are muscular. I couldn't agree more. So we're going to get into that and a lot more. If you want to be a part of the show, the way that you can do that is by heading on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is our separate platform, which is different from where you're probably watching the show right now. But if you want to be a part of the show, there's a live chat that's happening right there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and you can ask questions or leave comments or lob out criticisms. Just participate in the show. We're going to go through all the different segments, and at the end, we're going to take some questions. So feel free to go and do that at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And before we get into it, quick reminder, I have other channels down there in the description below that you may have some interest in. I released a big video this weekend about a Bitcoin conference that happened over the last about 2 days, Friday, Saturday last week, and some days leading up to that. Very interesting thing happening out of Miami. We had Ron Paul speaking there. We had Tony Hawk speaking. I talked about Kevin O'Leary. Elon Musk was making the news. Jeff Dorsey was talking at the Bitcoin conference. This is the CEO of Twitter, so a lot of stuff going on there. On my crypto channel, if you want to check that out. And we have some other stuff on the R&R Law Group channel where we're putting out a lot more content about Arizona law. Of course, as you know, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. And so if you know anybody in the state of Arizona that needs help with a criminal charge in Arizona, we would love your support there as well. All right, so big, long intro. Enough of that. Let's get into the news of the day. We're going to start off by talking about the coronavirus yet again. COVID-19, we're still trying to figure out really where the virus came from. Did this come from a lab? Did it escape from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, or did this come from a cave deep in China? Well, we now know that there was a report that was available last year, May 2020, that was funded by the government, that was conducted in a lab in California called the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which is a very, very big lab. And apparently they did an investigation into this. They did an inquiry. They did a deep dive into the origin of the coronavirus. And the big question here now is, why don't we know what's in the report? Well, apparently it's top secret, and it's so secret, in fact, that even our own government really didn't spend much time looking at it, because today there are several lawmakers in Congress on Capitol Hill who are slightly concerned that maybe they did not get this report back in May 2020 when it would have been pertinent, when our legislators were deciding what to do and how to respond to the coronavirus. Maybe if it was a lab escape, maybe if this was a genetically engineered bioweapon, hypothetically, from the Wuhan Lab of Virology, maybe our policymakers would have responded differently. Maybe Donald Trump would have responded differently. Maybe more lives would have been saved. And it sounds like we had this report. It was available for a year now, and we're just sort of catching wind on this. So we're going to do some heavy lifting. We're going to take a quick look at some background story from CNN. We're going to look at what's going on with the Lawrence Livermore actual laboratory. I want to show you. I didn't even know this thing existed, but it's actually pretty interesting. So let's start by going to CNN here. Says that classified report with an early support for the lab leak theory reemerges. Isn't that interesting? As a focal point for lawmakers digging into COVID-19 origins. So reemerges. I remember that there were a lot of news organizations that made sure that the first time it emerged, it really didn't go anywhere. Remember this, when a lot of people were talking about, hey, maybe this is something worth investigating. A lot of people all over the internet, a lot of politicians, a lot of news media channels all said, no, you're not allowed to talk about that. Nope, that's racist, that's xenophobic. And what we're going to do here is just believe what Dr. Daszak told us and what Dr. Christian Anderson told us, and we're just going to accept Dr. Fauci's words as gospel. And any of you peasants out there who dare challenge our authority, well, we're just going to throw you off the internet. We're going to call you a conspiracy theorist. We may accost you in the store with your children, and the list goes on and on. We may actually fire you from your job and out you on social media because you ask questions. Well, now CNN's coming back out and saying, oh, it's reemerging. Oh, it's just reemerging. No, you people buried it for about a year. Now it's reemerging because those of us who don't accept the narrative point blank are now asking or demanding answers. So here, this story was written by Katie Bo Williams, Natasha Bertrand, and Zachary Cohen, published today. This is a classified report that was drafted last year, warning that the COVID-19 pandemic might have leaked from a lab in Wuhan, has reemerged as a focal point, as lawmakers are seeking to revive the search for answers. And again, these stories irritate me so badly. It's like, yes, I appreciate when you're in the middle of a crisis, it's hard to understand what's happening because you're sort of trying to just tread water. Everything is funneling in your direction, all of the information like a fire hose. It's nice that we can look back. Hindsight is 2020. But we saw, in my opinion, an irresponsible maneuvering, narrative setting from the media at the outset. And we're going to get into this, but we've already talked about this previously here, that the Dr. Daszak article came out sometime in February. Then we have a March article from Dr. Christian Anderson. Then we have this May report that comes out after this. Both of those two yahoos are telling us, oh no, definitely didn't come from a lab, although they had really very little ability to make that conclusion. They did anyways, largely, in my opinion, speculating here because they have some sort of connection to the lab and they want to be as far away from the blast zone radius as humanly possible. So they were distancing themselves for it. But then, something happens. If you recall, we were in the middle of this narrative all last year that anybody who was not compliant, 100% compliant, was killing grandma. We heard that all day. And a report comes out in May that sort of gives us some more information here that might have helped people decide how to respond to this crisis. And on the back of the two prior reports from Daszak and Anderson that disclaim a lab leak hypothesis, we have this one that says actually it's kind of likely. So what happens then? Well, the report, it was issued by researchers at the government-backed Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in May 2020. It found that it was possible that the coronavirus escaped from a lab in Wuhan, according to 4 people familiar with the document. At a time when that line of inquiry was considered politically taboo, right? So it's not science. We were screamed at that this was science the entirety of last year. And I remember I was doing some of the show and I was trying to run an office, trying to run a business and trying to, help our clients and go to court. And it was a nightmare. Everybody knows that. I wasn't the only one living through it. But for those of us that said, hey, you know what? We actually have clients that are in custody. Okay. If you don't, go to your job, maybe somebody doesn't get a delivery on time or something like that, right? And I'm not trying to downplay other people's professions. I understand we all have very important things that we do in our lives, and I'm not trying to belittle that. But our practice is a little bit unique here as a criminal defense attorney because our clients sit in custody. So if we take time off, they just sit there, right? And so there was this big response from a lot of lawyers out there that said, oh gosh, we just have to close up shop. Everybody stay home. Everybody lock up and, just put your masks on and shut the courts down and shut everything down. And I'm looking around at my colleagues going, are you people whacked? We have a lot of people who are still innocent until proven otherwise, who are in custody, who have not been processed through the justice system, just sitting there rotting away, and you just want to go home and just put your mask on and not think about the justice system anymore? Give me a stinking break. And if we speak out a little bit about that, there were people in Arizona and elsewhere, and other lawyers and other politicians and doctors and everybody who would come out and tell you what a monster you were, what a piece of garbage you were, and how much you were doing to kill America and kill grandma, and what an unethical piece of trash you really were. And I mean, I sort of felt that way for several months last year until I just got over it and stopped caring about it. All right, you do whatever you want, lock yourself up, I don't care anymore. So let's go back to the article. It's not clear how influential the paper's findings were in advancing the government's understanding of the virus's origins, nor whether the document weighed in on a simmering debate over whether the kind of research being done on coronaviruses at the lab might have contributed to the creation of COVID. It's like the most important questions. The report also found that the virus might have developed naturally in the wild, echoing what the intelligence community now says it believes, and multiple sources with the document downplayed its significance. But the report has taken on fresh political power on Capitol Hill as the possibility that it emerged from the Wuhan Institute of Virology has gained mainstream legitimacy in recent months. This is the issue that I have so much with the science, right? We're being told that it's science, 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 listen to the science. There's no science here at all happening, right? It's all political BS that we see. Downplayed its significance. You don't really do that in science, right? You don't really downplay the significance. You try to explain what the results are, but if the results are what the results are, that's the conclusion. That's not what happened here. Our government is incompetent. So they downplayed the significance of it. We've got this happened on May 22nd. Don't even know, what role this had in understanding the origins of the virus. Don't understand whether the document weighed in on whether, we should do more research about this. The whole thing is just a mess. And we are prepared for this, right? One of the big shocks last year for many people was how woefully underprepared we were. everything from top to bottom. And we had no PPE. We had just, hospital beds. We were concerned that we're going to be overflowing with people. We heard all the stories that there are morgues filling out with bodies, and, we're going to have to start stacking people in the streets and stuff like that. And the list goes on and on. And so you're sitting around wondering, hey, don't we pay a boatload in taxes? Where does all this federal money go? I thought we were, what were all these multiple letter agencies doing? NIH, NIAID, and all these different, WHO. I know it's an international organization, but we pay them. And all of these doctors, all of these bureaucrats out there are supposed to be ready for something like this. Sheer incompetency across the board. And only now are we sort of starting to get our feet under us. The question that I always had, where does all that money go? Well, now we know. It goes over to the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And this is just one little area of a lab in this country. Let's take a look here. We can see the logo, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, established in 1952 by UC Berkeley 69 years ago. They are a big agency. Let's take a look here. It says it's a federal research facility in Livermore. Originally, it was a branch of the Berkeley National Lab. In 1971, it was designated a national laboratory in 1981. A federally funded research and development center, so FFRDC, primarily funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, managed by a number of different agencies. In 2012, it created a synthetic chemical element called livermorium, element 116, and named after it. Okay, and this is a big agency. I want to tell you, they do a lot of nuclear weapons research, they do plutonium research, and they do some other interesting projects over here. You'll see that the LNNL supports a broad range of scientific and technical disciplines. Here we've got chemistry, materials, life science research, focusing on chemical engineering, nuclear chemistry. We got material science, and then we have biology and bio-nanotechnology, right? So pretty heavy stuff. We have physics coming in there, like high pressure physics, accelerator physics. We've got emphasis on carbon, climate, energy, water, environment, National Nuclear Waste Repository. We have some more here about micro nanotechnology, lasers, optics. We see some more biotechnology, right? We're talking COVID here. So we got biotechnology, computer science, several technologies like solar energy, fusion energy, advanced battery research, and all of that, right? So they do a lot there. And most of this doesn't sound like it's really even COVID related. It sounds like nuclear physics and, engineering, precision, lasers, optics, nanotechnology, and all of that. But I wanted to show you the budget for something like this. So here we have research, nuclear, and basic science. Then it also says the budget here is $1.5 billion. Okay, staff, 8,000. And that's about the same as the numbers that I ran. So 1.5 billion. And, we hear about the government just throwing around billions of dollars all the time, like it's tit money. Oh, $1 billion? No problem. Here, take 2. So they do that regularly. And when we see numbers like this, it's not that big of a deal. You think, okay, 7,900 people, about 8,000 people. Well, in Arizona, we have the city of Phoenix. Okay. And the city of Phoenix is the 5th biggest city in the United States. It's behind New York City, LA, Chicago, and Houston. So it's big one. And we've got the City of Phoenix Police Department. What is their budget to run the entire city? Okay. A lot of people, 5th biggest in the world, it's 745 million. Okay. It's less than $1 billion. So we've got 745 million, and that houses about 4,000 employees. I looked at the numbers, 3,000 officers, 1,000 support. So that is literally half the size of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. We got 745 million here. It's about 1/2 of 1.5 billion. We have about 4,000 employees here. They have about 8,000 employees. Okay, so this one lab is basically double the size of the Phoenix Police Department, the 5th biggest city in the country. So that tells you what size scope this project is. Okay, it's massive. Tons and tons of people there. And in fact, this is what it looks like if you take an aerial shot of it. Okay, this is the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, and it looks honestly like a college campus. Okay, I went to a college here, Arizona State University, and it looks like they got a lake on that. There's a lake here. Okay, here's a screenshot from Google. You see the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. We've got open campus, high performance computer innovation. We have a car wash right here. We have a delivery center. We've got, what else? We've got credit union here. We have a cafe over here. We have another credit union here, 2 credit unions. We got a veterinary care. So we got animals take care there. We've got 10th Street, or an organic garden is over there. That's nice. Got office for your badges. Oh, we have a fire department as well. So we have an entire fire department as part of this organization, which is good because if you're going to be playing around with nuclear material, you're going to want to put a fire out if that happens quickly, right? Don't want Chernobyl going on over here. So it's a big organization, a lot of money, a lot of people working there, a lot of very smart people working there. Probably a pretty important report, right? If this top secret confidential report is out there, going to imagine that maybe we want to take a look at what's in it, and our elected officials at the minimum should absolutely be reviewing it before they set national policy and global policy in a way that might actually impact everybody's lives in the trickle-down effect. So we're going to go back to the article from CNN. It says the document has been quietly available to key lawmakers on Capitol Hill since last year, according to 2 congressional sources. But some Republicans on Capitol Hill are expressing frustration that they didn't have access to the document sooner. GOP members of the Energy and Commerce Committee have expressed concern about this, saying that they want more access to the report, which has been classified as, quote, top secret here. We have Rep. Morgan Griffith, this guy, he's from Virginia's 9th Circuit, says, quote, I think a lot of us think various oversight committees probably should have been made aware of the report a little bit sooner. Yeah, no kidding. You think so? The panel's Republicans have been conducting their own inquiry into the origins of COVID-19. They've requested additional documents from the National Institute of Health, the Department of Homeland Security, and the State Department. Livermore, which is the lab that we just heard of, is one of the places we want to get answers from because we think they have a bigger piece of the puzzle than we originally thought back in March, said Griffith. Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which is a media company, first reported on the documents existed 1 year after it was first issued. The report matters now, not so much for what it reveals, but because it offered some early support for the theory that the virus leaked from a lab, at a time when, at least publicly, the intelligence community was affirming that it believed the virus was, quote, not man-made and likely originated naturally. Why is that? Why is the intelligence community, why was that their original posture? Because it sounds pretty obvious that they were mistaken. Meanwhile, 2 former officials close to the Trump administration investigations into the origins say that the Livermore report was not discovered by policymakers probing the matter until months after its production. Oh, so they just didn't get the memo, right? They didn't get the email. Dang it, don't you hate when that happens? You have like a $1.5 billion lab that says, hey, you know, this global thing that we're working on, the biggest crisis in my lifetime that I've ever been a part of, is happening right now. We think that it might have come from a lab in Wuhan, China specifically. Nobody got the memo. That's our government. Raising the specter for some former officials of the so-called deep state career bureaucrats inappropriately burying the information that was validated the political pursuits of the Trump administration. Isn't that curious? That's an interesting paragraph, an admission here from CNN. So they're saying that maybe some people had a vested interest in one theory versus the other. Let's just play this out a little bit. What if the narrative from the mainstream media had in fact been that this was a lab leak from China, that maybe they were responsible for this and maybe they did cover this up? Suddenly, which candidate during a presidential election looks more attractive? The candidate who is in bed and cozy with China, or the candidate who has been consistently opposed and hard on China? Which one becomes more attractive if the American population is angry at China? I don't know. Tough question there. So maybe there is a conflict of interest here from some of the people of the intelligence community who've already expressed a lot of disdain for Donald Trump. We saw that previously with all of the Peter Strzok and that whole FBI saga. We don't need to revisit that. But maybe they're still compromised, and maybe they still have a bone to pick with a certain political ideology in this country. And maybe people in America are dying. Huge swaths of people have died as a result of this political decision to discuss the coronavirus, the origin of the pandemic, in political terms, not scientific terms, and then bury the information from ever reaching the people that it needs to in order to further your political agenda. Yikes. Still, other congressional officials familiar with the report, even those who support an investigation into the theory, say that the Energy Committee Republicans are touting its findings now as a purely political ploy aimed at validating Trump, who's championing the lab leak theory these people believed politicized the search for COVID's origin. So, okay. So they're mad at, you're politicizing this, which is like, okay, so what, right? If it's the right answer, who cares? Shouldn't we celebrate the people who are like, I told you? Okay, Rand Paul's the person who looks the best out of all of this, honestly. He's been going after Dr. Fauci for a year now, walking in and out of Congress, not wearing his mask, said, I've already had it. I'm already immune. Leave me alone. Take your anti-science BS and take it out of my face. To his credit, largely. And now he's been absolutely vindicated, proven 100% right. So shouldn't he be the political beneficiary of that? I don't understand that. If you make a correct call, you should reap the political benefits of that good decision. CNN says no. Oh no, or not CNN, but the people who are opposed to this report being released are suddenly saying, well, it's political. Of course it is political, because it was the right call. A House Intelligence Committee official said the panel had already reviewed the document as part of its investigation, and 2 other congressional staffers said that the lawmakers on at least 2 other committees had previously had access to the information if they had wanted it. So, it's they look, it was there. It was in their inbox. They didn't open it up. That's their problem. Multiple sources cautioned CNN. They said the document doesn't offer any smoking gun that proves one theory over the other. The report largely comes to the same conclusion that the intelligence community has disclosed publicly in recent weeks, according to multiple people familiar with it, specifically that the zoonotic theory of the virus origin and the lab leak theory are both plausible. Yeah, but all right. Well, thank you for that now, but that was not the story for the last year. But it does offer some circumstantial evidence supporting the lab leak theory, validating what was then considered a fringe notion. It was if you were burying your head in the sand. Everybody else, I think, connected with reality, knew what it felt like. Okay, we have seen, I made this point before, we have seen how our government and World Health Organization and the international community respond to outbreaks. We've seen it. Swine flu, bird flu, H1N1, whatever they all are. On and on and on. This was not that. This was something different. This did not feel like just natural bubbling up of a virus out of some bat naturally. Felt like something a lot more sinister, and our government responded that way. So did China, so did the rest of the international community. Felt like they knew something that we didn't. Turns out we did know. They just didn't tell us. Republicans are pushing the administration to declassify more information, says that it could help scientists and public health experts come closer to an answer. The Department of Energy, which oversees Livermore, briefed the House Energy and Commerce Committee on this. According to 2 people familiar, the labs is a collection of 17 elite scientific research facilities. They're going to play a key role in the 90-day intelligence review of the COVID origins that President Biden announced publicly last month. So you remember that Joe comes out after they had gone in there and stopped the inquiry that was started by the Trump administration. They stopped that. Then all of a sudden, these emails start leaking. The lab leak theory hypothesis comes into full play. Thank you very much to Nicholas Wade and other journalists actually doing some background work on this. It comes to fruition. Joe Biden, asleep at the wheel, turns around and says, oh yeah, forgot. We're going to do this 90-day intelligence review, so get back to work on that issue. So we'll see where that goes. Not holding my breath on any of that. One of the other outstanding claims that has been long lasting and lingering for some time here was the idea that the U.S. government didn't fund anything in China. And remember, Dr. Fauci was called into Congress, and Rand Paul had him there, and he was saying, hey, what about funding? You are the director of the National Institute of Health, Infectious Diseases, NIAID, all of those health organization letters. You will run all of that, right? What about this funding for gain-of-function research in Wuhan, in China? Did you do that? Yes or no? Fauci hemming and hawing about, he sort of, it reminded me of the Bill Clinton, it's the definition of what the word is, or whatever that was. Same concept. Well, gain of function, Rand, gain of function, no, we weren't doing gain of function. Okay, well, what is the specific definition of gain of function? Because now we're splitting hairs here. Are you talking about, what's the definition of function? Well, what's the definition of gain? And, it's all this type of garbage going on. Rand Paul knew what the ultimate answer was of course, the U.S. is funding some of this research. And Fauci, oh no, we don't do any of that. So, of course, that's not accurate, right? The Epoch Times came out and said the U.S. gave more money to a Chinese lab for bat research than Fauci claimed. You're kidding me. This was published back on June 5th, updated June 7th, which is today, posted by Zachary Steiber. Says the United States gave more than $800,000 to the top-level lab in China from which some believe the virus emerged, according to newly released documents. And we're going to go through these quickly here. I want to show you what we got here over from Jack Posobiec. Says, breaking, Judicial Watch, so give them a follow, releases the new NIH emails detailing even more funding for the Wuhan lab. So let's take a look at this email. You can see down here, So the first one, it was sent from Chase Crawford to Hugh Auchincloss, Jill Harper, Hillary Marston, Martin Johnson, and Courtney Billette down here. This was sent back on April 21st, 2020, 3:30 in the afternoon. It says, subject, the action by COB today, 421, review the draft NIAID response to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Funding question. Okay, so they're drafting a response to Wuhan and their funding question, right? Funding. Good afternoon. The NIAID received below the follow-up question from minority staff to the House Labor HHS Appropriations Subcommittee regarding the funding level for the EcoHealth Alliance project. Oh, remember them? That was Dr. Daszak, who posted the article in the Lancet Journal that started off the entire fake narrative that this was a natural emergence. The EcoHealth Alliance project subaward to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So remember how this goes? Goes from the NIAID down to EcoHealth, which is an organization that is, of course, not affiliated with the U.S. government. And then, other than their contracts, then the EcoHealth Alliance will subcontract that out over to Wuhan. Now we have here, that was for fiscal year 2019, complete funding history in the signature line below. So they're asking this question. There's a question that this governmental body has to respond to. It says, question, quote, do we know why the subaward amount for Wuhan Institute of Virology went down in 2019? Oh, just random fluctuation? Question mark. Okay, so they're wondering, last year we got this much money, but this year it's less than that. Is this just a random fluctuation, or do you have an answer? Do you have any thoughts on that? What can you tell us about this? And so what is the response? Oh, look at that gray box. Don't you hate that when that happens? That means this is redacted, right? Here is what it should have been. The OCGR Ledge, which is, this body, has worked with the DMID to develop the following proposed response. And it's all redacted here. B5. So we don't know what was said. Did they respond? It's just a fluctuation or not. And then we have here another redacted explanation. So we know that there was some significant funding going on. We know that there was more, there was a reduction, and then they issued a response here, right? Now, there is another email that comes out over here. Looks like this. Remember those subawards we were talking about? Here is a breakdown of those. So we have back all the way down to 2014. This is the NIAID subawards to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So you see how this is working, this trickle down. NIAID typically to EcoHealth. EcoHealth back over to the Wuhan Institute. And you can see the exact chain right here. NIAID funds these subawards to these organizations, all of which are EcoHealth right here. And then where does the organization award the recipient subaward? All over here to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So we can go back 2014 all the way through 2019. They got a lot of re-ups, and it's all for understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence. Every one of these, 2019, 18, 17, 16, and so on. Now, the funding, as you can see, has fluctuated a little bit, just like they said. But for the last years, 18, 17, and 16, they were all the same, $159,000, $122 a piece. Then it basically got cut in half in 2019, which of course prompted them to say, what the heck happened? Why'd you cut our funding in half? So when you add it all up, what do the numbers say for the last, at least 6 years, 7 years maybe? $826,277,000. $825,000. Lot of money, right? A little bit different than what Fauci was saying. Oh, no. This individual here on Twitter, it's Commander Data 85, as you can see here. One of the best characters from The Next Generation. If you've ever watched that show. Data was kind of a childhood hero. He says, well, what is this? We go over here to Government Tribe. We have a government funding project grant that has been tracked for $3.7 million. See that here? $3.7 million total dollars obligated. The award date was on June 1, 2014. Looks like it's funded all the way through June 30, 2025. So the details of this project grants funded by the NIAID, awarded to EcoHealth Alliance. This was awarded on June 1, 2014. understanding the risk of the bat coronavirus emergence. Okay, so we saw that in this summation here, that it was 826,000. Looks like this is set to be funded all the way up through 2025. Federal grant program, EcoHealth Alliance is awarded that contract. And of course, it goes back for the study of the bat coronavirus. So, you know, all right, well, there you have it. I mean, that's the data right there. Okay, and next up, while we're just knocking them down, how about this Dr. Christian Anderson? Remember Dr. Christian Anderson? Dr. Christian Anderson was this guy. We talked about him previously. Looks like this. And if you recall, there was this letter. Okay, so this was published on March 17, 2020. This was in Nature Medicine. So remember this date, March 17, 2020. Early. Remember, I think it was March 13th. When Trump declared the national state of emergency and started really to lock things down. I mean, things really started getting serious in March. We had a lot of the foreign travel advisories and lockdowns and all of that stuff happening up leading until this. And so we're in early coronavirus. He comes out and writes this article, March. And this summation here comes from Nicholas Wade says a second statement had enormous influence in shaping public attitudes. It's this letter published on that March date. He says, let's take a look at this. He says, to the editor, you'll notice Dr. Christian Anderson's here. We got this doctor, Andrew Rambout, Ian Lipkin, Edward Holmes, and Robert Gary. He goes through and he says, SARS-CoV-2, it's the seventh coronavirus known to infect humans. Here we review what can be deduced about the origin, we offer a perspective on the notable features, and we discuss scenarios by which they could have arisen. Our analysis clearly show that SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct or a purposefully manipulated virus. Remember him when he said that? March 17, 2020. I wonder if he had the information at that time to really do a proper analysis and to come to that conclusion. Well, Nicholas Wade says no. He says, unfortunately, this is another case of poor science. In the sense defined above, true, some older methods of cutting and pasting viral genomes retain telltale signs of manipulation, but newer methods called the no-seam or seamless approaches, they leave no defining marks on a virus. Nor do other methods for manipulating viruses, such as serial passage, the repeated transfer of viruses from one culture of cells to another. If a virus has been manipulated, whether with a seamless method or by serial passage, there's no way of knowing if it was in fact engineered. Dr. Anderson and his colleagues were reassuring their readers of something they could not know. Okay, back in March. So why do they do that then? What's up with that? Now, he just deleted everything off of Twitter. Isn't that interesting? We have a virologist who told Fauci that SARS was potentially engineered. He just nuked his Twitter account. This is over from Tyler Durden at zerohedge.com. And we'll read that story. But first, I want to show you this. Okay, this was his account, Christian Anderson over here. And this guy, Billy Bostikson, says, that little shit, Anderson, just deleted 5,000 tweets. Content wording on that. Says lab leak and vid : saw he deleted his tweets before March 7th, 2021 and suggested saving them via the Google cache. So why is that, right? A California virologist who told Anthony Fauci that they look potentially engineered, he just deleted more than 5,000 tweets. He runs the lab in Anderson, California, sent an email to Fauci, said the unusual features of the virus, and this is what he wrote on February 1st. Okay, so let's just timeline this out. February 1st, he wrote an email that said the unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the genome, less than 0.1%. So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some features potentially look engineered. Adding that he and his team found, quote, the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. The genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. Meaning, if this thing evolved naturally, we would expect it to look a certain way because we've seen that before. We've seen how other viruses look. This one that we looked at doesn't look like that. The genome is inconsistent from that. So he posts that, or he sends that email on February 1, and then suddenly March comes by. March 17th comes by. So between February 1 and March 17th, about 45 days, 47 days, let's say, he had time to reanalyze everything, throw out his old conclusion, come up with a new article, connect with four other people and write an article and publish it. That is the opposite of what he said previously. He learned a lot of science or something at that time? Interesting. It says here that Anderson was responding to an article sent to him by Fauci exploring the origin of the virus. The next day, Fauci sent an urgent email to his deputy, Hugh, with the subject important, writing, Hugh, it is essential that we speak this morning. Keep your cell phone on, read this paper, as well as the email I will forward. You have tasks today that must be done. We talked about that email last week. The document attached was Barak Shi et al., Nature Medicine, SARS Gain of Function PDF. Talked about this last week. So right after one of Fauci's trusted scientific advisors suggests that COVID could be man-made, while Fauci and his associates publicly dismissed the possibility as a conspiracy theory, he then shot a research paper concerning gain-of-function research, which Fauci was funding at the Wuhan, to his deputy. Interesting. Very interesting. And then Christian Anderson just starts deleting everything, right? So here were his tweets originally. So we have tweets 9,029, right? Google has still cached some of those things, so you can still go find them. Google's going to be removing them. So he goes from 9,000 here over to 4,000 there, deleted, a bunch of those. He said he deleted 5,000 weeks this week. Says this is a lie. All the tweets preceding March 7th are deleted. This isn't some tool to auto-delete tweets after an N number of time elapses. So he responds, he says, oh, my old tweets are auto-deleting after he got busted, right? They're auto-deleting. He says, no, they're not. Thanks, though. Then suddenly, yesterday, oh no, it's gone. The account doesn't exist anymore. It's probably all of those internet trolls, I would guess. I don't know. Who have questions about his role in maybe papering over the origin of the coronavirus. Probably just kind of tired of that. This was what Zero Hedge said originally. This was the original email. We spoke about this last week. I don't want to spend any time on it, but this was from Fauci to Christian Anderson. Says, thanks, Christian. Talk soon on the call. This was the paragraph here that was very important. Tony, he says, Jeremy, Christian, this just came out today. If not, this is of interest to our current discussion, right? So forwarded them something and then says here, here's that line. The genome is inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. That was the line right there. This is an email from February 1, 2020. Shortly thereafter, March 17th, he writes a report disavowing all of that. All right. Well, here we have our final takeaway from Zero. Says, at least he won't have to keep blocking pesky questions from inquiring minds, because before he deleted his account, he blocked Zero Hedge. So, okay. Well, wonder if he'll keep getting contracts from the federal government. Probably. Let's take some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where you can join in on the fun on the show, as well as I would encourage you to check out some of the other channels down in the description below. So first question here today is from Sharon Quidney. Says, we never heard about this because of the media Democrat deep state agenda, likely backed by the CCP to destroy the economy and sink Trump. Honestly, the more and more we get into this rabbit hole, the more and more I think that is actually accurate. Boxy Punk Chick says, what really upset me is when Arizona and Utah had the highest COVID positive rate, and there was for those incarcerated. They wouldn't even release people who were expected to release and held them longer than the sentence. Yeah, it was a disaster here. The whole thing was everywhere. I mean, it wasn't just Arizona. Everything was a mess. And there are innocent people. People don't recognize this. There are many innocent people sitting in custody all over the place. And they go, what? Yeah, because people can't bond out. You think about innocence until proven guilty, the presumption of innocence, only if you can afford to get out of custody. If you can't afford to get out of custody, you get picked up on something. You can't bond out because you're unemployed or you have no family, you have nobody to call. You just sit in custody. You haven't been convicted of anything. You haven't been pled guilty of anything. The only standard that has been met has been enough probable cause, and that's it for a judge to keep you in custody. It's a sad thing. And people just forget about those people. It's really, really awful. Jeremy Matrita says, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in Livermore, which is considered to be in the East Bay area. I know some people that work there. A lot of groundbreaking research has come out of that lab, such as the PCR tests. I have no doubt about it. I'm sure they do amazing research. I would love to take a look at it, and I would like our elected officials to do so as well. Maybe it would give us some clues as to what happened here. that apparently it just landed in our congresspeople's email inboxes. And they, oh, dang it. It got flagged as spam. Can you send that again there, lab? Send that over to me. Sharon Quidney says, many lives could have been saved if not for Trump derangement syndrome. According to Victor Davis Hansen, Trump said the virus came from a Chinese lab. Therefore, it couldn't have possibly come from a Chinese lab. Yeah, I know. There was that all. That's what the entire year felt like. Felt like everybody was saying stuff that was just sort of not really based in reality. And if somebody said something, people would say the opposite for no reason. And you're going, what? All right. Georgia Peaches is here. Says, hey, Rob, just want to thank you for all the great information you present. I'm at a loss on how you can present some of this craziness with a straight face. LOL. I'm a gal from Georgia, not to be confused with the guy from Florida. Georgia Peaches. Georgia Peaches. You know, I've been to Georgia. When was that? Oh my gosh, as a boy. And it was a wild experience. As somebody coming from Arizona, we have dry heat here. I went to Georgia, I think in the summer. It's not a dry heat. And I've been to Miami too. And Georgia was, it was a tough one. But I was a boy, so who knows? Good to see you, Georgia Peaches. I don't know how, you know what? I don't know how I keep a straight face either. I don't know. Sometimes I want to throw my screen just right into the wall or out the window, something. But I don't do that. Meditation. All right, we've got Joe Snow. Says, did CNN just call out the deep state? You know, I can't tell anymore. It's like they're backtracking so hard right now. Everybody's coming out. All of the people who 1 year ago were like screaming from the rooftops that anybody talking about these issues was a lunatic and a conspiracy theorist, they're all coming out now going, what? Hey, hold on a minute. You know, there might be something here now that you mention it. We're all going, what? What kind of bizarro world is this? All right. I'm glad you're aboard. Hopefully we get to the bottom of it. Sharon Quidney says, intelligence community is an oxymoron. These are the same folks that said that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Well, they've been pretty incompetent, I just think, across the board. I mean, I think government just in general is incompetent. Kenny 1B says LNNL has been hit extremely hard with wokeism. So hard that friends of mine, highly accomplished in their technical fields, are seeking new jobs because the work environment has become hostile. Wow. Wow, that's interesting. What a great comment. Thank you for that, Kenny 1B. That's interesting. You know, I totally believe it. I mean, why would they be immune from that? And we're starting to hear about this concern from doctors. Barry Weiss, I think, wrote an entire article about this on her Substack. She left the media, started a Substack, making a killing over there. She writes actual good work and she does good journalism. So she's over there. She wrote an article that said that doctors are becoming woke, that this the medical facade is crumbling because everybody in there is woke now. And there was another article from the ACLU. There are lawyers now who've been, fighting for free speech and First Amendment rights and civil liberties since the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And now they're all looking at the ACLU, which is refusing to fight for free speech for certain people, now saying, what the heck is going on here? It's not about free speech anymore. There was an article I was reading this morning. I can't remember the lawyer's name, but he represented Nazis like in the 1970s, like actual Nazis, right? Representing them in court saying, yeah, they're Nazis. Yeah, they actually hate all minorities and non-white folks. Like that's their political position and they're allowed to say what they want to say. And I'm going to represent them in court. Like that's that type of lawyer, right? Which hats off to the guy, amazing. And now the ACLU is saying, oh no, we're only going to sort of fight for free speech for certain ideologies and certain demographics. And so people who are, civil rights advocates and have been doing so for the last 40 years are scratching their heads saying, this is really sad that the institution that really used to stand for something suddenly doesn't anymore. And if that's going to go into our labs, our nuclear laboratories and our medical facilities and our doctors have conversations about, your depression. You're feeling depressed today? Well, maybe you should feel less depressed because you've got all your white privileges and depression shouldn't affect you because society has been overly biased against other people, not you. And maybe that'll help your depression by recognizing all of the privileges that you've been afforded all of your life, right? Something like that. And you go, that's not medical. It's not clinical. What are we talking about? All right. LT13 says, I have a big feeling this is a don't look over here, look over there smokescreen for something else. That's an interesting perspective. So I'm wondering, as a follow-up on that, LT, do you mean what is the smoke screen? Do you think the lab escape theory is the smoke screen? Interesting. Hack Consulting says, I mean, regardless of if it were natural or a lab week, COVID still affects my body as if it were any old virus. I guess this top secret report was held up when it wouldn't be given proper care until a time when it stopped being insane. Did the GF riots, must be George Floyd riots, force the report to be scuttled for a year? Yesterday was D-Day, by the way, June 6th. Yeah, it was. D-Day was a big day. You know, when I was growing up, I was fascinated by D-Day. I studied that a lot. I studied the beaches, and I used to read those books. I was so fascinated by it. And the idea that people would just, do that. I mean, it was wild. The whole thing is a wild story. It's not a story. It happened. This was one of the most wild operations that I've ever read about. Anyways, those movies where somebody has a flashback, they sort of zone out and then the movie flashes back. That just happened right there when I was thinking about D-Day. All right, so we're going to move on now. All right, so we're going to change gears. Long show today. I always get wound up on the COVID stuff. But now we're going to talk about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States came out with new orders. They denied some cases from being heard and they accepted some other cases. And we've got some information that we want to unveil about what's going on. Interesting thing happened. Remember we spoke about this previously, that the Supreme Court has been doing this interesting sort of ruling type where every ruling has been unanimous, 9-0. Time and time again. We got another one of those today, which is very curious. If you recall, we're talking about this in the context of court packing, because remember, we are sort of coming out of the last era where the newest addition to the Supreme Court is Amy Coney Barrett. Amy Coney Barrett replaced Judge Ginsburg, who is no longer with us, of course. And so that switched the balance of power of the court a little bit from 5-4 to 6-3. It was 5-4 conservative liberal. Now it's 6-3 conservative liberal. And so everybody's been going, oh my gosh, we're going to be living under this totalitarian, authoritarian, conservative dictatorship of the courts. And suddenly we're all scratching our heads saying that doesn't look like it's happening at all, because we've had a number of unanimous opinions. That means they're all agreeing with each other. So where is this dictatorship? Well, we're going to find out. So today we learned that the Supreme Court will not hear a challenge to the male-only military draft. So, as we know, if you are a man in this country, which is hard to define, I think, these days, then we need to make sure that you sign up for the draft. I remember doing this, I think, when I got my driver's license, or when I was 18. When I first registered to vote, you have to kind of check that box. I remember this many years ago. And so now what this lawsuit is about is saying that there is a violation of equal protection. There is a problem here because we're just imposing the obligation to serve in the armed services on biological males. And that doesn't feel very equal. We spent a lot of time in 2021 talking about equality and about equal rights and inclusion and diversity. So lawsuit comes up. Hey, why are you just picking men? Doesn't seem fair in 2021. What's going on here? So the Supreme Court on Monday actually declined to hear the challenge. Oh, so the draft was filed by an organization called the National Coalition for Men. Court order means that for now, even though the draft is not implemented, only men will still be required to register for the selective service. We have Sonia Sotomayor, Stephen Breyer, Brett Kavanaugh. They all wrote to explain their vote, noting that Congress may take up the issue in the short term. Right, so we're gonna read from this here. It says, at least for now, we're gonna defer to the court. So we're gonna get to that in a minute. The group that was filing the lawsuit asked the judges to reconsider a 1981 decision that upheld the Military Selective Service Act, which men, but not women, are required to register for the draft. Key to the court's ruling, which was decided by the court made up of all men, was its observation that women as a group, unlike men in the group, are not eligible for combat. Okay. Yeah. Cole tweeted that Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be proud of an effort to challenge one of the last formal sex distinctions under federal law, referencing the fact that Ginsburg spent her years as a young lawyer blazing trails in the fight against gender discrimination. In court papers, the ACLU argued that male-only military draft is unlawful sex discrimination, and that the registration requirement has no legitimate purpose and cannot withstand the exacting scrutiny sex-based laws require. By burdening only men and excluding women, the Military Service Act sends a message that women are not vital to the defense of the country. The Department of Defense lifted the ban on women in combat in 2013. Now a group of retired military officers support the efforts, including Stanley McChrystal. We got Claudia Kennedy, Michael Hayden's. Their lawyer, Lindsey Harrison, wrote in a friend of the court brief, says, quote, "Our armed forces draw from the strength of the entire nation, not only its men." So she added that women graduate from the nation's top service academies. They complete the most challenging combat training programs. We have an acting solicitor general, Elizabeth Prelogar, told the justices that because the recommendation is under active consideration in current Congress, any reconsideration of the constitutionality would be premature. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at the opinion itself. This is coming over from Judge Sotomayor. You can see her here. And I wanted to show you what's going on. So this is the statement of Justice Sotomayor. And you'll notice that we had previously said that this case was not accepted into the court. So what happens here is, if you recall, the Supreme Court has sort of limitations on its jurisdiction. And you have to sort of ask in some situations to be admitted to, or to have your case heard by the court. It's called a petition for certiorari. And what happened here is the lawsuit happened. It sort of worked its way up the courts, and it landed on the Supreme Court's door. Supreme Court reviewed it, sat around with the judges, said, should we hear this case? Yes or no? They decided no. They voted it down. We're not going to hear the case. But on the rejection, the judges still want to say something as to why, right? And judges might want to do that because they want to go on record. They might want to say, hey, this is an important issue. I think that we should handle this at some point. And I do think that there's a conversation to be had about what the legal issue is, but not right now. And they want to explain that away for future, for posterity. So let's take a look at what's happening here. Supreme Court of the United States, the National Coalition for Men versus Selective Service System. On a petition for the writ of certiorari to the United States, this is coming out of the Fifth Circuit. This was decided today, June 7th, 2021. The petition for the writ is denied, right? So many people say, well, why are we reading it then? Well, because I want to see what the rationale is. So we have Sotomayor, we have Justice Breyer, and we have Justice Kavanaugh. That's bipartisanship. That's unity there. Wow. Joe Biden's vision for America is really coming true. Wonder if he'll not pack the court now, since everybody's getting along so nicely. We'll see. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, this says, prohibits the government from discriminating on the basis of sex absent exceedingly persuasive justification. No sex discrimination unless you meet this standard. Got to be extremely persuasive. The military service, though, requires men, only men, to register for the draft when they turn 18. The court upheld the Act's gender-based registration requirement against an equal protection challenge, citing the fact that women were excluded from combat roles and hence would not be needed in the event of a draft. So that was from a prior case in Rosker versus Goldberg, right? And they're saying that back in that prior case, this old case was decided back in 1981. When they did that, they said, yeah, no, it's fine. You can only have the draft include men because, well, women don't even really have combat roles. So just that's it. You don't even need to include them because they're not going to serve. And now Sotomayor says, well, the role of women in the military has changed dramatically since then. Beginning in 1991, thousands of women have served with distinction. Wide range of combat roles, military, aircraft, infantry. Got briefs from another thing. We have women have passed the military's test. They become Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Green Berets. No longer any positions closed to women in the force. Petitioners asked the court to overrule Rosker. Okay, so this is why this is important. Because there's an opportunity to overrule a prior case. Now, Sotomayor continues. She says, petitioners, however, are not the only ones asking whether this can be reconciled today. In 2016, Congress created a commission that's going to be looking into this. Then on March 25th, 2020, they released its recommendation, which means eliminating the male-only registration. So their court is saying, Congress is already looking into this. In fact, they say just a few months ago, the Senate Armed Services Committee held a hearing on the report where Chairman Jack Reed expressed his, quote, hope that a gender-neutral registration requirement will be incorporated into the next national defense bill. Remains to be seen, of course, whether Congress will end gender-based registration under the Military Selective Service Act, but at least for now, the court's long-standing deference to Congress on matters of national defense and military cautions against granting review. I agree with the court's decision to deny the petition. So Sotomayor is saying, listen, Congress is handling it right now. We've already got a commission that was formed. We already have a report that was drafted March 25th. We already have Chairman of Jack Reed from the Senate Armed Services Committee saying, hopefully we can have a gender-neutral registration requirement. So we're going to let Congress deal with it before we get involved and start messing around with something that might be moot in the first place. Why would the court accept the case, spend all this time, oral arguments, hearing everything, come on in here, what's your argument? Congress just goes, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. So they're going to say, we're going to wait for it. Now, the big question, women, are you going to be eligible for the draft now? Oof. You know, I was in college and I forget who it was. I had a friend who was petrified of the draft. This was college. What was that? That must have been Iraq, Afghanistan, that whole era. And I had a friend who was hung out with him like every weekend, you know, drinking buddies in college. And he was petrified of the draft. And there was a Democratic congressman, forget what his name was, and he was really talking about the draft, like enthusiastic about it at this time. And he said, no, we should bring it back. You know, we're sending all of, poor people over to Afghanistan and Iraq. So I want the draft so we can send all the rich kids over along with the poor people. And he was really, I forget who he was, but he was really excited about it. And my friend was just petrified about it. And I'd say, hey, did you hear about that, Congressman? Yeah, it's getting close. Bill's working its way through Congress. We're going, baby. Suit up, get ready for it. It was a lot of fun. So obviously that didn't happen, right? We're not in a situation. Thankfully, we have a volunteer military where we have people who are, brave and they want to make a commitment to their country and go and sacrifice a portion of their life to develop some skills and, sort of contribute to America's interests domestically and abroad. It's a good system. So hopefully we can keep it that way and not mandate that people go and, do things that they do not want to do under conscription from the government. But now what we want to see is whether or not, in the interest of diversity and inclusion and 2021, whether or not women also are eligible for the draft. And really, this gender neutral registration requirement, that means all 77,000 genders might be eligible for the draft, which is a good thing. I think so. Equality and inclusion. What else did the Supreme Court do? Well, they ruled unanimously 9-0 against non-citizens who entered the U.S. without authorization in the 90s. So interesting thing is happening here. I do not practice immigration law. It's a whole can of worms. And, we refer that stuff out to people who sort of specialize in that area. But there's an interesting thing happening here. So what happened back in the 90s is people would come in to the United States under this status. It's called TPS, so temporary protected status. And there was a sort of a carve out in our immigration system that said, yeah, you can come in here. It's temporary protected status. And you can just sort of hang out in this temporary status for a period of time, and then we'll decide what to do. There's a process by which when you're in one status in immigration, you can sort of adjust your status, right? Go from sort of somebody who's here as a permanent resident into a full citizen. Somebody who's here on a visa can maybe apply to sort of work their way up the chain. So you transition from one status to another, called adjustment of status. And then here, the question was becoming, or has become, if you are somebody who came into the country on TPS, so this temporary protected status, but you've been here for a long period of time and you want to adjust your status, can you do that and move this into a green card? Can you sort of go from TPS into something that is more closer to citizenship or permanent residency in the United States? So it's an interesting question because, of course, this is a big question that we're dealing with on the southern border. Kamala Harris, I think, just is down there in Guatemala, so we'll see where that goes. But this order came out from the Supreme Court. In plain English from SCOTUS blog, they say, a married couple entered the U.S. from El Salvador. They're protected from deportation under a program in which the U.S. doesn't send people back to nations in crisis. The couple applied to become permanent U.S. residents. SCOTUS says, you don't qualify. Sorry. And it's because it's temporary, right? It's temporary protected status. This is a little bit more about the ruling. All 9 judges voted in favor of this outcome. The decision was written by Judge Kagan here. No dissenting opinions, okay? So we're all in alignment. It's unanimous, folks. Everybody's on board with that. peace, harmony, and unity on the Supreme Court. I need a moment. We have some more information here. Jose Sanchez and Sonia Gonzalez, they came to the U.S. from El Salvador without authorization in 1990. U.S. government granted them temporary status, 2001, designated El Salvador as part of the TPS program. There were earthquakes in that country back in the 90s. Under the program, living in the States was permitted to remain here due to unsafe conditions in their home countries. Sanchez, Gonzalez, they maintained status for 20 years, during which Sanchez's employers filed an immigration visa petition for Sanchez as a skilled worker. Officials approved the petition, said that he could be admitted to the U.S. as a lawful permanent resident. They simultaneously approved Gonzalez, his wife, for admission as a lawful permanent resident. The government, however, denied the couple's application to use the adjustment of status process in order to transition from temporary to permanent residency without leaving the United States. Immigration officials ruled the couple's original unauthorized entry disqualified them from adjustment of status. The government relied on the text of immigration, which restricts the in-country adjustment of status process to non-citizens who were inspected and admitted or paroled into the United States. So they don't get to follow it, right? This is sort of, this is one of those things where, people will read a case like this and they'll say, that stinks. This guy was here for 20 years and like he's going to get thrown back or something. I really doubt that that's the case. I don't think they're going to say, sorry, you're out of here, buddy boy. But what they are saying is that this specific maneuver, using this, this issue, using somebody who came here on TPS status, on temporary protected status, who is actually not somebody who came here from a foreign country that came in legally and lawfully, maybe they would be allowed to adjust their status because they came in appropriately on day one. This is not what happened here. These individuals came into the country unlawfully without legal status, then applied for TPS, then applied for permanent residency through the visa process. So there are different mechanisms for the people who did not follow that route. For the people who came to the country without lawful status, those are the mechanisms and the procedures that they need to use, not the current one that they tried to use. And so what the court is doing is just sort of, taking some of the, teasing out the meatballs from the meat sauce and sort of, separating everything out into their own little nice piles. So we'll see if that has any long-lasting consequences. My guess is probably not, because that's probably not a very common situation. But I don't practice immigration law, so who knows. Next up, the Supreme Court is adding one new case to its docket for the next term. This is a case about whether the federal government can assert the state's secret privilege to avoid disclosing evidence in a lawsuit. This was brought by Muslims who say they were targeted for surveillance based on their religion. So this is an interesting case. And when the Supreme Court says it adds it to its docket for the next term, that means we're going to be hearing about this case. So this case is coming up for oral arguments. Supreme Court is going to give us a ruling on this. And this does actually impact criminal law to some extent. So we're talking about state secrets. We got some more background here from SCOTUS blog. SCOTUS tells us Supreme Court on Monday said it's going to add another case to its list. The court turned down a challenge about the draft. We just read that. We have a new case here granted. FBI versus Fazaga. What's going on here? The FBI's petition for a review in a case filed against the FBI and several FBI agents by members of the Muslim community. This is happening out of Southern California. 3 Muslim men allege that the FBI targeted them because of their religion by using a confidential informant to gather information about Muslims. This was all a part of a counterterrorism investigation. The dispute now before the court stems from the government's assertion of the state's secret privilege. Okay, that we don't have to give you any of our information. This is a state secret. Oh, the confidential informant? I'm not going to tell you who that was. State secret. We're using him for other people. All of the, how you got this information, all of it, it's all state secret. Federal court, after agreeing that the privilege allows the government to withhold certain evidence, saying you don't have to give that to them, dismissed the claims. But the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit reversed the ruling, said, yeah, you got to give them that evidence. Hand it over. It held that a provision of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act trumps the state's secret privilege and gives the district court the power to resolve in private and without requiring all sides to be present the merit of the men's lawsuits. Okay, so it's going to be a juicy Supreme Court decision. We've got different layers of different privileges. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act says that they can keep that stuff, or that they have to give that stuff out. State secrets say they got to keep it. Supreme Court's going to get in here and unwind all of these different pieces. Let's take some questions. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. First in the house is from Speech Unleashed. Says, I wonder if the SCOTUS releasing all these unanimous opinions is their effort to prevent packing the court. It certainly feels like that. And I'm guessing that there is some accuracy to that. That, what they're doing here. Remember, we've got some very contentious cases coming up. I think we've got, some expected non-unanimous opinions coming up pretty soon. Roe versus Wade is going to be on the docket, or on the docket at some point in time. And what it feels like to me is that the Supreme Court here is saying, look, we can get along. This is not going to be this totalitarian, authoritarian rule by these, really conservative maniacs, which is what people have been saying for some time, that as soon as this happened, that we were going to see, the banning of all of your freedoms and all sorts of stuff. And that's just not reality. But we'll see if that actually trickles down to the Democratic Party and their base. Of course, they want to see a lot of progress. And they define that by adjusting the judiciary. They already have the White House, the executive, the legislative branch. They have that too. They want the trifecta. They want all three, and they're going to get it if they can help it. We got Todd Trout that says, are non-binary eligible for the military selective service? Well, yeah, I think so. I think that if it's gender neutral. I think non-binary is gender neutral. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I saw some people, I think pronouns are sort of morphing into like animal creatures, I think I saw that on Twitter. I could be wrong about that. I shouldn't talk about that. It's dangerous territory. LT13 says, did you hear Kamala and her, we are going to build a big, beautiful wall with a big, beautiful door in it for people to come through legally. Oh, Donald Trump. Legally, right? Big, beautiful wall, big, beautiful door in it for people to come through legally. Did Kamala say that? I did not hear that. I may have been on the show. I know she was traveling down there. I know the plane, had an issue, and then now she made it down there. She's going to Guatemala, which, okay. Our borders are hard at work. Farmer's daughter is here in the house, says, went to my therapist today to discuss my concerns and navigate in this world where families are divided. Should have no idea what her politics are, but she is woke. And when I told her my concerns about CRT, she told me where she went to school and oppression and racism are real. She told me she couldn't discuss that with me because it was a passion for her. Well, Well, I don't know what to say about that. That's complicated. How long have you been seeing this therapist? And is anybody saying that racism isn't real? Is that like a thing? Like oppression and racism are not real? I don't think anybody who is opposed to CRT denies that. I think that racism is a thing and oppression is a thing. It's obvious. Just look around the world, right? It exists. But the question is, what do we do about it? Do we go sort of the MLK route where we talk about people's character and what they do with their lives? Or do we just really focus and double down on skin color? Because I think that's where CRT is going, sort of identifying people based on their skin color and then dealing with them according to that predetermination, which feels very racist to me. I don't know. But, I honestly, it sounds like your therapist is setting up a straw man a little bit. You said, hey, I am concerned about CRT. She says, well, oppression and racism are real. I never said that they weren't, but I am concerned about CRT. We're not talking about whether racism and oppression are real or not. Oh, gosh. Well, there are a lot of other good therapists out there. And, oh, gosh, what a mess. This is what I was talking about. Is this why you shared this? Because we were talking about doctors maybe going woke and not being able to provide a significant level of service because of their ideology? Could be trouble. All right. So those questions are all over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you for all your love and support over there. We're going to change gears. Last segment of the day before we wrap up out of here. It's a leftover. California, we know if you're a Second Amendment person, if you like firearms, you know that if you've been traveling around this country, technically you're not supposed to bring those with you when you go into California. At least until today, maybe, a federal judge last week overturned California's 32-year assault weapons ban. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all in California, but might be going that way. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to take some time for the effects of this ruling to flesh themselves out throughout California. It is a big ship to turn. California has very stringent firearm rights. If you're a Second Amendment person, there are some pretty amazing apps on your phones that you can actually just download, and it will show you what the rules are in different states. Every time you go in California, it's like yellow or red. It's terrible. So now we see a federal judge kind of saying enough of this garbage. Okay, the Second Amendment is a constitutional right. We had the case in Heller from the U.S. Supreme Court that sort of defined that a little bit more clearly for us. And now we're starting to see maybe the tide turn. We got some background from this story here from the New York Times, written by Mike Ives last week. Says federal judge overturns 32-year assault weapons ban. Friday, there was he called it a failed experiment, prompting a sharp retort from the state's governor. California has prohibited the sale of assault weapons in 1989. The law was challenged in a suit filed in 2019 against the state's attorney general by the plaintiff and the San Diego County Gun Owners Club. The judge, Roger T. Benitez, he wrote that the sections of the state's penal code defined assault weapons and restricted their use are hereby declared unconstitutional and shall be enjoined. Right, I'm going to show you what he says here by this. He's basically giving the government some time to be on notice about this and start implementing the changes. I'm going to show you what he means specifically. But the judge said that he granted a 30-day stay of the ruling at the request of the attorney general, a move that would allow Mr. Bonta to appeal it. So, as I said, before we go crazy here and doing cartwheels in the streets with your AR-15s, keep in mind that this is appealable. And the legislature is going to respond. And California, look, they've been depriving you of your Second Amendment rights for 32 years. They're going to try to extend that as long as they can. So hold tight. AR-15 re-entered the American market in 2004 after the end of the federal assault weapons ban. Has a national following among gun owners. Also been used in mass shootings. Newsome, worst governor in America, wrote that comparing the gun to a Swiss Army knife completely undermines the credibility of this decision and is a slap in the face to the families who've lost loved ones to this weapon. In a separate statement, Bonta called Judge Benitez's decision fundamentally flawed, vowed to appeal it, which of course they will. He says that there is no sound basis in law, in fact, or common sense for equating assault rifles with Swiss Army knives, especially on Gun Violence Awareness Day. After the recent shootings in our own California communities, gun activists celebrated. Yeah, they should. I wonder if that judge did that intentionally. Did he do that intentionally, do you think? Releases this opinion on Gun Violence Awareness Day? I didn't even know that was a thing. I don't know if he knew that was a thing or not. But if he did, oh man, that is great. Brandon Combs, the president of the Firearms Policy Coalition, a group in Sacramento that helped to bring the lawsuit, said that the ruling held what millions of Americans already know to be true. Bans on so-called, quote, assault weapons are unconstitutional and cannot stand. Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation, another group that was involved, said this statement, the judge's ruling had, quote, shredded California gun control laws regarding modern semi-automatic rifles. He said, it is clear the judge did his homework on this ruling. Benitez was appointed district judge 2003. In 2017, I remember this guy. I remember reading about him. Blocked a new California law that would have banned a magazine more than 10 rounds. 3-judge panel upheld his ruling last year, but the appeals court said that the 11, we talked about him previously, I think. That's right. That's where this was. So Judge Benitez, who we're going to see here in a minute, actually I think he was in the thumbnail on the video. We've talked about him before. He's been involved in prior gun cases. 10-round magazine was a limit that California imposed. He threw that out. Now there was the Ninth Circuit also threw that out, and they're going to reappeal it to the full panel. Some critics of the judge's latest ruling says it was handed down on the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. The ruling is alarming and wrong, said somebody else. It's an insult to the families across the nation. Here is a copy of the order. Here's the decision. I want to show you this introduction, okay? One of the more epic introductions that you'll see in legal writing. It says, like the Swiss Army knife, the popular AR-15 rifle is a perfect combination of home defense weapon and homeland defense weapon. No, he says homeland defense equipment. All right. Good for both home and battle. The AR-15 is the kind of versatile gun that lies at the intersection of the kinds of firearms protected under Heller. Yet the state of California makes it a crime to have an AR-15 type rifle. Therefore, the court declares the California statutes to be unconstitutional. Oh my gosh, that's so great. Plaintiffs challenge a net of interlocking statutes that impose strict criminal restrictions, complex definition of what assault weapon means. Second Amendment, quote, elevates above all other interests the right of law-abiding responsible citizens to use arms in the defense of hearth and home. This comes from Heller. Supreme Court holds that the Second Amendment protects guns commonly owned by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. At the same time, the Second Amendment confers an individual right to keep and bear arms. And although the Supreme Court cautioned the Second Amendment does not guarantee a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, there is no evidence that the Supreme Court intended that language to be a license to avoid its common sense holding in average contexts. This case is not about extraordinary weapons lying at the outer limits of Second Amendment protection. The banned, quote, assault weapons are not bazookas, howitzers, or machine guns. Those arms are dangerous and solely useful for military purposes. Instead, the firearms deemed, quote, assault weapons are fairly ordinary, popular, modern rifles. This is an average case about average guns used in average ways for average purposes. One is to be forgiven if one is not persuaded by the news media and others that the nation is awash with murderous AR-15 rifles. The facts, however, do not support this hyperbole. Facts matter, they say. FBI murder statistics do not track assault rifles, but they do show that killing by knife attack is far more common than murder by any kind of rifle. In California, murder by knife occurs 7 times more often than murder than rifle. For example, according to FBI, in 2019, California saw 252 people murdered with a knife, while 34 people were killed with some type of rifle, not necessarily an AR-15. Californian is 3 times more likely to be murdered by an attacker's bare hands, fists, or feet than by his rifle. In 2018, the statistics were even more lopsided, as California only saw 24 murders by some type of rifle. Same pattern can be observed across the nation. Yeah, which is interesting because if you've been somebody following this channel, you know that we talk about the different levels of scrutiny. In other words, if the government is going to pass a law that imposes some burden on you and it imposes that burden on a fundamental constitutional right, there better be a damn good reason for doing that. In this case, if they're going to be imposing on your right to keep and bear arms, something that is in the Second Amendment, it is the Second Amendment, and it's been very, very clearly defined by the Supreme Court recently in the case of Heller. If they're going to impugn that right, that fundamental constitutional right, if they're going to try to take that away from you, there better be a good justification for it. The justification that assault weapons are some sort of dangerous menace to society is not accurate. The judge just went through, gave you the data from California's own numbers. So what is the justification then? If they're really concerned about the loss of life, maybe they should deal with handguns. Maybe they should deal with knives, which are way bigger in terms of loss of life than rifles are. But it's not about that, as we know. It's about a political movement, not about data. Plaintiffs, they challenge all of these different codes. Look at this. We've got 30, look at all these different. We've got 3,800 assault weapons restricting, not even going to read it. It is declared that these statutes unconstitutionally infringe upon these rights. Judge says here in line 13, you might not know it, but this case is about what should be a muscular constitutional right and whether the state can force a gun policy choice that impinges on that right with a 30-year-old failed experiment. Love that. Muscular guns, baby. It should be an easy question and answer. Government is not free to impose its own new policy on choices of American citizens where constitutional rights are concerned. Heller explains the Second Amendment takes certain policy choices and removes them beyond the realm of permissible state action. The state doesn't have the authority to act on those things. California may certainly conceive of a policy that a modern rifle is dangerous in the hands of a criminal, and that it is therefore good public policy to keep modern rifles out of the hands of every citizen. The Second Amendment, though, stands as a shield from government imposition of that policy. And that's exactly why we have it. Right? That's why it's the Second Amendment. Not 27, it's number 2. There is only one policy enshrined in the Bill of Rights. Guns and ammunition in the hands of criminals, tyrants, and terrorists are dangerous. Guns in the hands of law-abiding, responsible citizens are better. To give full life to the core right of self-defense, every law-abiding, responsible individual citizen has a constitutionally protected right to keep and bear firearms commonly owned and kept for lawful purposes. In early America and today, the Second Amendment right of self-preservation permits a citizen to repel force by force when the intervention of society in his behalf may be too late to prevent that injury. Then, as now, Second Amendment may be considered a true palladium of liberty. Fortunately, government tends to restrict the right of self-defense. The court does not lightly enjoin a state statute. However, while the court is mindful that the government has a legitimate interest in protecting the public from gun violence, it is equally mindful that the Constitution remains a shield from the tyranny of the majority. Something Alexis de Tocqueville wrote. As Senator Kennedy said, the judiciary is and often the only protector of individual rights that are at the heart of democracy. Law-abiding citizens are imbued with the unalienable right to keep and bear modern firearms. Yes. Yes. Love that. That was really good. Yes. Love it. All right. So temporary stay. What does he want here? The Attorney General asked for a stay of the injunction pending the appeal. So as we heard, he said, okay, this is enjoined. All of these statutes, they're all garbage. Second Amendment is more important than all of your other justifications for trying to impinge upon that right. But he also makes note, we're going to temporarily just stay this thing. Okay, so I'm going to order this, but we're going to hold it because the Attorney General has a lot of work to do. And he does, no question about it. So, of course, he's going to appeal it, take it up to the Ninth Circuit, and we'll see what they do with it. Here, we're wrapping up. It says the defendant, Attorney General Rob Bonta, they have to do all of this stuff. Let's see here. They have to, and those in active concert and participation with him, and those duly sworn who gain knowledge of this injunction order or who know of the existence of this order, they are hereby enjoined from implementing or enforcing California Penal Code, any of these. Okay, you can't enforce any of these laws anymore, is what this judge is saying. Can't enforce any of this stuff. Defining an assault weapon, doesn't matter. Assault weapons obtained by bequest or inheritance, doesn't matter. If you want to inherit your AR-15, no problem. Restricting the importation of those, quote, assault weapons by new residents, nope, not at all. Move to California, order an AR. Restricting use of those registered assault weapons, nope. Don't have to worry about that, right? Whatever that law is. Prohibiting the possession of assault weapons by minors, also gone. The defendant attorney general shall provide, within 10 days, the government shall issue a declaration establishing proof of the notice. So they have to basically post notice of this. They got to notify everybody. Hey, tell your people, your attorney general, your chief of police, your prosecutor, your district attorney, tell your staff, tell your people, the court has spoken. Love it. Disgusting slap in the face, says California Governor Newsome. Right? Fred Gutenberg, his father of one of the pupils killed at the Florida high school in 2018, told CNN, people are going to die because of this ruling. Except for the loss of my daughter, for all the other victims. Okay. Well, comparing an AR-15 to a Swiss Army knife is a disgusting slap in the face, says Newsome. He issued a statement on Friday, said that a district judge in San Diego was appointed by Bush. He was unlawfully depriving law-abiding Californians of their rights. All right, so the rest of this is pretty standard stuff. I want to show you what's going on with gun purchases, by the way. So Zero Hedge over here says gun stocks get a bump after California judge overturns the assault weapons ban. Background checks break new record. So I'm pretty sure that the gun control argument is kind of over, I think. I mean, they're still going to try. But even, Beto, he's not even around anymore. He's still around, but remember, that was his whole campaign, gun violence. He's going to be, the gun grabber of America. But we have Heller now. We've got most of the courts who I think are coming on board now saying, look, enough of this stuff. It doesn't work. It's garbage. And politically, the American people they're just buying guns all day. So that's not slowing down at all. Shares in firearm-related stocks, they nudged higher on Monday. Federal judge overturned that case. We just talked about that. Vista Outdoor, American Outdoor Brands, Ammo Inc., Sturm Ruger, Smith & Wesson, Claris, they all saw gains in early trading. S&P was down today, but they're all moving up. So people are buying firearms, and the stock market is responding. Positive action in firearms also follows a Friday report that FBI background checks hit nearly 4.7 million in the month of March, the most since records began 20 years ago. And it's not even a little bit. It's a 77% increase. Okay, massive. accessories, backlogs, everybody's backlog. I don't know if you've been to a gun store lately. You try to find ammo lately. It's just not around. According to CNN, a record number of those purchasing guns are first-time buyers. That's right, baby. We've also seen in times of civil unrest that we see people go out and they say that they need to protect themselves. Yep, says Jack McDivitt. So they're going to buy guns to protect themselves. The only question is, will they learn to use them? I hope so. I hope so. You can get a lot of return on your time with a simple firearms course. And I'll tell you, yeah, I mean, it's, well, I've shared that story before. Let me show you what the graphs look like. FBI firearm background checks monthly, going up from 2007 down here, right around about 1 million. We're up to here, 2021. Look at that, baby. We're talking over 4.5 million background checks. Month of May alone, the comparison between months. So in May 2020, we had 3 million. May 2021, 3.2 million. And in 2019, 2.3 million. So we jumped up about 650,000 new background registrations in 2020 versus 2019. Steady clip. What happened here? Oh yeah, it was the summer of unrest. Remember that? Happened here in Arizona. We had hooligans running around Scottsdale Road right there. Happened all over Minneapolis and everywhere around the country. Portland, Seattle. People started to say, kind of don't want that happening to my business. Looks like the cops aren't around. Maybe it's time to make sure that I protect myself. Buy a firearm. Good move. Let's take a look at some of the questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you want to support the show, you can go to this address. It's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're also on Rumble. We also have several new channels down in the description below that I would love to invite you to. Check those out. Question number 1 here is from John Delar. Says, Justice Roberts is not a conservative. Quit counting him as one. Everything Bush touched turned to shit, and Roberts is a great reminder of his disastrous presidency for Republicans. He is an embarrassment. Yeah, you're right. You're actually right. I do categorize Judge Roberts as a conservative because he's kind of middle of the road there. Candidly, I think Judge Roberts is a lot more interested in the legacy of the court and the public perception of the court as the Chief Justice. So I don't think he's really a liberal or a conservative. Honestly, I think he's somebody more interested in the public perception of the court and the legitimacy of the court and how it acts as an institution in society, more so than he is any particular policy outcome. And I mean that. I mean, he doesn't, abortion, he's got an opinion on it, right? Gun rights, all of these, he's got opinions on those things, and he'll try to work those in, but not at the expense of anything that would jeopardize the institution. And we saw this with what he did back during Obamacare. Remember when that case hit the Supreme Court? He allowed it to go through because he categorized it as a tax. Awful legal justification, in my opinion. Does John Roberts know that? One of the smartest legal minds in the history of the world? Yeah, he knows that. So why did he do it that way? And he knows it's a garbage argument. He knows that it's not right. He knows that it just he knows all of that. Why did he make that decision? To protect the court. We have a new president who just got swept into power. This is his first big domestic policy achievement on the back of a lot of political momentum. To have the Supreme Court come out and throw that case out? Wasn't going to do that. So he had to find a way to make it work. More interested in the institution than he is the outcomes. And a lot of people don't like that, myself included. You have a job to do. I understand protecting an institution, but we didn't put you in there to protect the institution. You got the nomination to rule on cases, is my opinion. Hack Consulting says, how many people have died to Swiss Army knives? How dare Governor Newsome minimize the trauma of being hacked to death or corkscrewed just because they didn't quickly die from a gunshot wound? Recall Newsome. It's a good point there, Hack. Yeah. Why doesn't he go after those knives? Hack says the Second Amendment here has no fringe cases. Does it? Why would a citizen have a howitzer? Why would we want that? Well, if surplus military equipment were sold to private individuals to own and maintain during peacetime, the military could surge their capacity by renting, leasing those surplus equipment later. Also, private citizens are more able to figure out experimental upgrades to our military and argue for better fixes than the military can. So, I think what I gathered from that comment is that you want to buy a howitzer, which I don't have any arguments there. I would also like to have a howitzer one day. Maybe we'll have a howitzer together and we'll go shoot it. Chairman of the board says, is there an actual legal definition anywhere of assault rifle? Yeah, it's a firearm that's very offensive and sometimes places you in immediate apprehension of imminent offensive contact. That's the definition of assault. The so this is the old common law definition of assault, placing another individual in reasonable apprehension of imminent offensive contact. I think that's the tortious definition from the restatement, if I correct. I could be totally wrong on this. So the assault rifle would be any person or any action that puts any individual in reasonable apprehension of imminent offensive contact with a gun. That's the legal definition, according to yours. He says, no, honestly, Chairman of the board, I don't know if there is. There probably are many attempts to define that, but it's a stupid definition. P.S. A cute dog contest is broken out in the live comments over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That's right. Cute dog contest. Oh my gosh, Chairman of the board, probably leading the way on these cute dogs. If you want to be a part of that, got to get over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And thank you, Chairman, for helping me plug that show. All right, let's take a look. We got a big one over here from E. Dantes. Says, Rob, get this. A friend was in Mexico along with his wife and friend in the friend's truck, which had a lockbox fixed to the truck that had a pistol in it. My friend and wife had no idea there was any lockbox or gun. They crossed the border. The Mexican federales pulled them over. They had to spend 9 days in Mexican prison. Oh my gosh. They had to pay all kinds of fines and what really equates to ransom money. The other person is still in prison in Mexico. Oh my gosh. Moral of the story, don't take any weapon into Mexico, even if it's in a lockbox and you think it's no big deal. Also, that's good advice. Also, the difference in the freedoms we have here in America are so much better than in many countries in the world. My friend said he isn't ever going near anyone who is going to badmouth America. He is decking them. Hopefully by decking, you mean, handing them a deck of cards and saying, let's play solitaire together, right? Peacefully. So, look, I come on this channel and we beat up on the government a lot here, but we have a pretty damn good country. Not because of the government, okay? It's because of the principles that we as a citizenry have established here, and we hold the line every time they try to encroach upon them. That's why it's a great place. It's not because of the government. It's because of the principles, and it's because of the people that implement and demand that those principles be maintained. And otherwise, it's a quick descent into a country that just washes those civil liberties right down the toilet. I don't want to live in that country. We have Hack Consulting says, if we cannot trust our public health officials to not cover up their failures, even at the great cost of lives lost, then how can we trust the designation of mental illness by these same type of experts? Or anything they say, really. Perhaps the issue is that people's rights are violated all over of something truly wrong, the patient's head. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, so why is mental illness allowed as a disqualifier? I see what you're saying. If the person is truly insane, why do we keep them alive? If someone is getting money for the hopeless, correct the Second Amendment. If a person is truly insane, why do we keep them alive? I don't know. Oh my goodness. Well, it's because they're humans, and maybe they can become not insane anymore and we can help them through it. And just because somebody might be, not well doesn't mean that their life is meaningless. Yeah. So, it's a good question. Thank you for that, Hack. We have Furby Slayer here. Says Second Amendment 2A says arms the knife is exactly the same thing by letter of the writing. Says arms. The knife is exactly the same thing by the letter of the writing. So Second Amendment says arms. When the amendment was written, the citizens had everything, including cannons and warships. All the weapons were predominantly in the possession of the citizens. It's a great point, right? It's like, I don't know. Did Washington, did Franklin, did Jefferson, did Adams, did anybody back there, what? Maybe they had a cannon. Can we have a cannon or the modern equivalent of a cannon? I'm game for that. All right. Great questions, everybody. That was a good show. Thank you so much for lobbing all those questions in. And all of those questions came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I want to welcome the new people who signed up here today and are supporting us and joining the great community. Welcome, big welcome to Sparrow61. Welcome to the community. Furby Slayer, saw Furby in the house today. Got a question from Furby. Welcome. We have Harleen Quinzel. Now, Harley Quinzel, welcome to the community. Very happy to have you here. We have V Bittersweet is here. We have Julie Girl, V Bittersweet, maybe very bittersweet. Julie Girl's in the house. And Tech 130, welcome to the community as well. Love all of you. Thank you so much for your support. And I really do mean that. Great questions came in from all of you here on the board today. Thank you so much for those. And if you didn't participate in the show and you want to, you can sign up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com so that you can ask questions. But there's a lot of other stuff you can get as well, like a free copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning. It's available as a PDF for you to download for free. We also have a copy of the slides that are also available for you. You can go and download everything we went through today. You can download a copy of my impeachment party documents or my personal productivity system. It's called Existence Systems. We share links throughout the day. We have great people there, a lot of great people. And in fact, I'm thinking about, trying to maybe do a weekend show. So yesterday at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, I posted a Sunday shout out, went through some of the comments. I think it's about 15 minutes. And so I posted that for supporters only. If you want to get some of that sort of lower key, let your hair down a little bit. It's Sunday nights. Don't have PowerPoints. Kind of relax. Going to try to do more of that over at Locals. And so you can check that out if you want to go there and be a part of that. You can also join us for our next monthly meetup, which is going to be happening via Zoom. June 26th is the next one. Again, this is free for everybody at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also free, our law enforcement interaction training seminar. It's coming up this weekend. Oh my goodness, Saturday, June 12th at 12 Eastern. It's going to be about 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. We're going to talk about how to deal with law enforcement. So I'm going to get the registration probably posted tonight. Where did the time go? Oh my goodness. So I'm going to post that over at Locals tonight, maybe tomorrow. And if you want to be a part of that, we'll have it pinned to the top. You can register, and then we'll look forward to seeing you on Saturday. Lastly, before we get out of here, I am a criminal defense attorney. I know I don't plug that too much throughout the show, but that's really what we do on a daily basis. Got a whole team of people here in Scottsdale that are absolutely passionate about helping good people facing criminal charges find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and their lives. And so if you know anybody in the state of Arizona that is facing criminal charges, we would love the opportunity to help. And I mean it, whether it is a misdemeanor case or a felony case or a traffic violation or it's an old case, we can help. We help people with DUIs, domestic violence, drug offenses, some of the disorderly conduct things you see in Old Town or 6th Street or whatever that is in your town. A lot of people are out there, sort of getting emerging from the COVID cocoon. And sometimes, law enforcement will just round everybody up and charge them with crimes. And so if you need help or you know somebody that needs help, we would love the opportunity to be able to provide that for them. If they are in the state of Arizona, we offer free case evaluations. And as I mentioned, we love to help people find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases, and then hopefully their lives. So if you have any referrals, we would be humbled and honored if you sent them our way. Otherwise, my friends, we're going to be right back here, same time, same place tomorrow. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on that East Coast for that one Florida man, not Georgia woman, but Florida man out there. Everybody have a tremendous evening. I will see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.